Здравствуйте, меня зовут Анастасия.
Good afternoon, I'm Anastasia. I represent CrimeaSOS. It's a pleasure to meet you. I cannot hear you now. Please turn on the mic, left corner at the bottom. Good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen. UCMC starts its online broadcasting. Greetings to everyone who joined us here and online. The topic is the facts of political prisoners' life in the occupied Crimea and in the Russian Federation, and the floor is given to our speakers. Good afternoon, dear friends. We thank the representatives of UCMC to be here today. CrimeaSOS NGO welcomes you at the presentation concerning the conditions of the political prisoners in Crimea and in conditions of Russian armed aggression. This is our one more research that is directed to show one more angle of the occupation by the Russian Federation of the Crimean Peninsula and systemic and conscious policy of terror and persecutions that Russian Federation uses in order to hold factual control over the territories and to avoid any opposition from the people in the occupied territories and those groups that are dissatisfied with the situation and as individuals who do not like the situation. So these political persecutions were committed against 139 people, out of them 119 were sentenced, and they are the subjects of our research. It is worth noting that the criminal persecutions that are carried out by the representatives of the occupation structures and directly by the representatives of law enforcement structures of the Russian Federation, they are not connected with the establishment of justice or protection of law in the occupied territories. As I've said, this is exclusively the instrument of persecution, the instrument of oppression and control over the occupied territories and the residents of these territories. And the evidence of this are the conclusions and the information that we are presented and published in the report in our survey. These are multiple grave violations of human rights and violations of domestic legislation of the Russian Federation. And the occupants are guided by this legislation started 2014 when they started persecution of the residents of Ukraine. This is inhumane treatment, the use of torture, creation of such conditions for political prisoners in which there is a threat not only to their social rights, but also the threat to their health and life. We would like to thank for this research. We would like to thank all those who participated, and we want to thank those victims who provided direct information to our monitors who collected this information. We would like to thank the partner organizations who for a long time actively and systemically collect all the information connected with such violations of human rights. We'd like to thank mass media outlets, mainstream outlets that allow us to more in-depth speak about some topics, about some violations. It is evident that this information about conditions of the prisoners in which they are held, this is important information in the context of soft diplomacy, of the occupation of Crimean Peninsula. This information about violations of rights, this is used by Ukrainian state to carry out advocacy, to create pressure. By diplomatic means, we should clearly understand that all those instances, these are personal stories. connected with, unfortunately, connected with huge suffering with prisoners and their relatives. Today's presentation during today's presentation, I would like to first speak with Mr. Envir. Can you hear us? Okay, not to be in delay, I would like to give the floor to the former political prisoner and activist, representative of Crimean Tatar people community, and the nice person we are really glad to see free, despite all those troubles he faced in Crimea when he was persecuted. Emil Kurbedinov, we would like to give the floor to you in order to share your negative experience and to tell us about what you overcame. Thank you very much, dear friend. So this is about torture, this is about conditions in prison. It is difficult to speak about it, and it is difficult for people. This will be forever with these people who survived all this. Unfortunately, not everyone may join to tell all these things they suffered, and I'm among those who were lucky to go free and to tell about what is going on in the occupied Crimea, about all those violations of human rights that are ongoing in Crimea, about conditions of imprisonment. There is no proper conditions for people in which I was, and today the best sons of our nation are in these conditions. It all started from my house, where I lived, in my parents' house, where I lived, Simferopol region. They just broke in, they put handcuffs on me, and they thrown me on the floor, and they started to beat me. They beat me without explaining anything. It repeated time after time, and I was not allowed even to put my clothes on. They put me on the armchair, they asked many questions. I didn't know answers to these questions. I knew that such things happen in Crimea. I followed this information. I supported political prisoners. I gathered some money for them. I tried to help the families of political prisoners. I knew that there were torture by electric current. Fortunately, they didn't use electric current against me. They didn't put this current through me. What happened in my house? You cannot even see it in some fantastic movies. What they allowed themselves, they were not ashamed. Even before my parents, they threatened me, they were beating me, and the most terrible thing that my parents heard of all this. And now my parents remember all about this. And I'm here, and I'm limited to say something in order not to harm them, because they are still in Crimea. And this limits me in many issues like this. And yes, there are tortures, and I will say about this. And I took decision that I will tell about this during press conferences like this. So these people did me with their legs, with their fists. They also planted some cartridges in my place. So the most terrible thing that I have seen everything they done, and my father heard all of this. At that moment, I didn't recognize one person, but then I understood that this was former SBU officer. Now he is the officer of the Russian Security Service, Mishabazov, and he cooperates with the occupation authority, and he violates human rights in Crimea. When I said to him that I saw when he planted some cartridges into my bed, he said, if need be, we will put grenade launchers and tank in your garage. They were not afraid of anything, and they believed that everything they do, no one would know about it. So the press conferences like this, we will tell you about it. I will tell you about what is going on in Crimea. And after they planted some cartridges to me, they also planted the book that is considered extremistic. I didn't have such literature in the parents' house. We didn't have such literature. And several times they brought me out of my room in order that in presence of Glukhova Alisa Mikhailovna, she came with these FSB officers. She told me what to do, and she was trying to read some papers, some court decisions. On my request to use Crimean Tatar language, I used my right to ask this. They brought me to my room and started to beat me once again. Each time when I tried to protect my rights in some way, each time they brought me into my room and started to beat me once again. This happened several times. I do not remember it clearly, but it is evident it was about 5 times when they brought me in my room, and then they put me out of my room, and I was not able to demand something. It was difficult for me even to breathe. Can you understand this? They beat me on my kidneys, and they damaged my kidneys, and I didn't know what a person should be to overcome all this. Fortunately, I was able to survive this. I believe that when I will be brought out, they said that we will take you out and the court will decide what to do with you. I demanded to have a lawyer, and they didn't allow my lawyer to come. Several lawyers at that moment wanted to help me, but FSB officers, they didn't allow this. When I was taken away, they brought me out from my house in the garden. I have seen a gazelle car, white color, with tinted windows, and they put me in this car. And before this, I have seen that there are several gazelles like this. One of them was at the start of my street where my house is. So this was a special operation to intimidate people. They wanted to say, see, we want to arrest a criminal. I didn't know how they wanted to explain all this to themselves and to others. So the things like this, they do them in order to intimidate others, my neighbors, my relatives, all of them. So I have really close-knit family, and we are not such people that are easy to intimidate. And many of you know about the difficult fate of our people. We returned to our motherland, and in 2014, Russian Federation started to commit such violations against our people once again. When I was taken out of my house, I thought that maybe torture is behind me, but Shambazov and Maximenko, they were beating me in the car. They broke my fingers on my hands. Then there were big bruises on my fingers. This continued for 2 days. And on the 24th, when the court hearing happened and the judge practically deprived me of liberty, before this, I understand that they had agreement that by any price they need to arrest me and to put me in pretrial detention facility. For 2 days, they humiliated me, they threatened me, and they said that they will attack me, my parents, my brother, and I spent in the pretrial detention facility a half year in this facility, and then I was released, and I signed the note of not leaving, and I attended court hearings on against political prisoners, and at the start of 2019, the criminal case was seized against me. And after they continued to persecute me. There is such a moment when I was in one of the court hearings. Zhikashka, as I remember, this was his case that was heard. Mironets Victoria Vladimirovna called me by the phone and invited me to the prosecutor's office of Simferopol region. And in the presence of my lawyer, Mr. Vladin, she said during this meeting that my pro-Ukrainian activity is not liked by them, and they have some information that I allegedly I'm a person who allegedly wants to organize some actions in support of people who are involved in Hizb ut-Tahrir. We all know about them. And after this, I decided that my life is in danger in Crimea, and I fled Crimea. And after this, they started to stopped persecuting my parents, and now I take part in actions and press conferences, and I will support everyone who will tell about political prisoners, and I will try to help them in this. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you, Emil, for this. These persecutions, they are massive and systemic. They are connected with many violations of human rights. I hope that we'll have an opportunity to hear from Edem Bekirov, former political prisoner, representative of Crimean Tatar freedom movement, and he will be able to tell us about the time he spent in jail, about difficult obstacles he faced, and his case was monitored. It has been monitored for a long time. and it was connected with big threats. Now we see you, and we hope that we will be able to hear from you. Please tell us about your very unpleasant experience. But fortunately, you were able to survive, and now you're able to share it with us. Salam alaikum. It's a pleasure to see you all here. This experience is really hard. It is evident. This detention in pretrial detention facility in inhumane conditions. This is really a difficult obstacle to overcome, and everyone should come through all these sufferings with dignity. Simferopol detention facility that was built in Queen Yekaterina times, it is marked with the E letter. This building is really in heavy conditions. It is unimaginable even. First floor's basement, on the walls, there is water. Water is flowing. There is no proper hygiene. So toilets are lacking sanitary at all, and there is mold everywhere, and people suffer terribly there, inhumane conditions. Simferopol pretrial detention facility, people who are there, they ask God whether they are political or non-political prisoners. They ask God to have this court trial, to leave and to go to prisons, because it is easier to be there than to be in this pretrial detention facility in Simferopol. So this attitude the attitude to political prisoners, those people arrested by FSB, they differ a little bit from others who are there on criminal charges and different charges. Why it differs? Because the pretrial detention facility officers, they are afraid of FSB officers, and they are trying to provide better attitude to political prisoners, but this is minor, negligible. And we understand that this is all punishable FSB machine. They take people for nothing. They work to destroy the nation. Today they do everything possible in order to bring the person to such a despair, to such a threshold when there is a point of return, but they do not allow to cross this line. They bring people to such a point, to such a condition of despair. I, together with the Commission, I attended Lukyanovsky pretrial detention facility, and we surveyed the conditions for the prisoners. And in Lukyanovsky pretrial detention facility, the conditions are different. The windows, they are warmer. In the cells, it is warmer because windows are better. And Simferopol pretrial detention facility and special blocks there. In such conditions, Server Mustavayev in his cell 08, he stayed there, and then he was sent to the special block in the cell 808. And conditions are terrible. There are 2 people in the cell, but it is impossible to move. And it is impossible even to go to the toilet standing. You should go and to bow. And with Ruslan Trubach, we were in the special block. We were deprived of everything. We were. I thank Ruslan. He helped me to wash, and it was really difficult to keep the hygiene. In all the cells where our Crimean Tatars are, it is rather clean because we got accustomed to cleanness. Because we have culture like this, we used to have good hygiene. And the head of the pretrial detention facility, he even told the commission that if there are Crimean Tatars in the cells, there is proper hygiene, because the Crimean Tatar, they do not wait for someone to come and clean walls and floors. They do this all themselves. Our nation is really clean. We are trying to do everything in a proper way. And we pray in these cells. That's why we keep everything clean. And in this way, our guys survive. But if there is something that the officers of the facility do not like, whether you look in the wrong way or do something minor, they just send people to the basement, and there the conditions are horrible. There is only one small window without glass even. And about inspectors and guards, they make lawless actions. They have bad attitude towards the inmates, not only to political prisoners, but also towards others. So they trade some things for cigarettes, and FSB is like KGB in Soviet times. The structure is the same, and the methods are even worse. It's a pity that our state, our Ukraine, and the international community doesn't do a lot in order to free our people. They are in prison for nothing. They are there because they believe in God. That's why they are there. People should not be in prison for their ideas. They are not terrorists. They are just mortals. And these people are innocent. They love their neighbors. They care for everyone. And they are accused of state treason. They are accused of grave crimes, and it's a pity. It's a great pity. And we cannot do anything about it. What can we do about it? To speak about it at all the platforms. We may carry out some protests at the embassies, but we cannot do anything about this machine. Because, first of all, the state should face its people, and the state does really little in order to free our citizens of Ukraine. And the world community, we came to Geneva, we came to Brussels, and they do not hear us, they do not understand us, they do not understand what is going on. I do not know what proofs we should provide about the conditions. They sent people to Russian prisons, to the farthest point where they have snow in June. And this is pure destruction of our people. They want to break our people. To break our prisoners means they want to break our people on the whole. But our people will survive everything. Our parents, when they were brought out in 1944, they knew that we will be able to return to Crimea in the future. We do not have any other homeland, and we would want, we believe that we will be able to return to Crimea, and we will put those in prison who humiliated us. We provide inhumane conditions to those who put our political prisoners in such inhumane conditions. This is the only thing we want. The first is to free Crimea and to free political prisoners, and to put in prison those who put us to prison, because this machine won't stop. The world community should stop it, because no one else can do it. They are really strong. Thank you very much for this emotional speech. We truly believe that political prisoners, all those who suffered, they will find justice and come, and Crimea will become free territory once again. We thank you a lot. This is great that you will be able to join us through Zoom. Thank you for your speech. I would like to say several words about sick people, elderly people who are in prison. Medicines are needed for them. What they do, they say, prove this, give us a license. Russian medicines, these are not medicines they are provided with. They just harm people, all those medicines from Russia. And they ask for licenses for the medicines from Ukraine. And they demand licenses to use these medicines. And also they say that the nurse comes at 9, for example. So she shows up, and then she disappears, and the medicines are distributed only until 2 o'clock. And when prisoners asked for medicines, she said no one brought the medicines. So this is also abuse of sick people. And it's impossible not to fall ill in such conditions in this pretrial detention facility. It is impossible not to fall ill. And the God gives them forces to fight and to overcome, but the repressive machine is working against them. So this situation with medical conditions, this is really important to speak about it. This is a huge problem. This is one of the reasons why we should all together help to free the prisoners. We should not forget about them. And continuing our presentation, I would like to note that unfortunately, the political prisoners, they do not have a voice. All those who come out, they tell their stories, but when the people are in the pretrial detention facility or in prison, they are practically isolated and deprived of their voice. And this is a terrible situation when a person doesn't know what is going on outside and is not able to speak about conditions they are in. And the only people who save the situation are activists, lawyers, and relatives who provide parcels. They try to visit them to get this relevant information about their health, about those violations that are used against them. And we have one of the lawyers who, from the very start of the occupation of Crimea, put a lot of effort in order to help political prisoners to form a picture of violations. Emil Kurbedinov, we see you on the screen. Thank you very much, Emil, for finding time to join us. Please, we'd like to know about your opinion about conditions for political prisoners, about your work and about the work of your colleagues, how you can help. Please, you are given the floor. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everyone. I greet everyone. I am really glad to hear you, to see you all remotely at the moment. Only political prisoners may tell about all terrible things that are ongoing in the pretrial detention facilities and in prisons. They may speak for hours about it. These people spend a lot of time there. And from our side, we are trying to help those who got in such situation and those who are persecuted. The first thing we should understand that these people there are not because they violated something. Pretrial detention facility, they use it as torture. This is not legal. They just pressure people. They torture people by holding such people in pretrial detention facility. There is no legal reason to hold these people there. So many times we face such a situation when the political prisoners were told, if you accept this guilt, you will be on home arrest, you will be free. So the state, they do not afraid that those people will flee or they influence the witnesses or hide something. They just do this to put pressure on such people. They know about terrible conditions in there. Inhumane conditions. We heard many times about it. If we are speaking about pretrial detention facilities, these are conditions, water, electricity, toilet, food, and the attitude from administration. So you're considered and recorded as terrorists, as extremists, and you are 24 hours CCTV is 24 hours, and the conditions concerning medicines and health is difficult, and access, there is no proper access to medicines. Several times it happened so. Some people were brought to healthcare institution. If a person is near death, then they will bring this person out to see the doctor. And in the colonies, there are also isolation rooms. People are put there for pressure. It is impossible to sit there. You are constantly on your feet. This is also torture, 24 hours on foot. This is torture. Timur Abdullayev case and in other cases, when they were in colony, they feel such a pressure. And also what we do, first we appeal against such decisions, we visit prisoners regularly, we monitor the situation in the pretrial detention facility and colonies, and we are dealing with the appeals, and also we provided with this information through the media. We also provide this to the public monitoring commissions, and unfortunately they get only the information they want to hear, not that is really brought to them about political prisoners. Recently in the situation this happens, so we know that there are such measures of pressure, like transfer from one cell to another. If you are transferred from cell to cell, it means that you are not honest in some way, and they try to so additional pressure is made on you because of this. One of the favorite ways how they pressure you, they take away religious literature. For many political prisoners, for Crimean Tatars, Quran and other literature, this is spiritual food for them. And it is allowed, it is in Russian, with all the seals of approval, but it is taken away. And this is a psychological pressure on a person because of his behavior, or he shares it with shares his views, and he shares his view on political situation, or speak about persecution of Crimean Tatars, and in such a way they are trying to pressure these people. Thank God there is no torture in the pretrial detention facility against political prisoners. I mean beatings or struggling. So the lawyers and human rights defenders, they really contributed to stop torture in Simferopol and in other places where our political prisoners are. So these are more than 100 people. And we know that mainly there they use physical torture, moral torture. They put people in isolation, in terrible conditions. Do you hear me? Yes. About our work. We may speak about it a lot. Due to support of human rights defenders and lawyers and the media, the lawyers, my colleagues, who go to colonies, who visit isolation facilities, and they highlight in the media the facts, and also relatives. They send complaints to prosecutor's office and to other bodies about local bodies of power. And so we do not see proper involvement from their side. Maybe they do something, maybe there is a resonance in the media among human rights defenders, then we see some changes. But prosecutor's office, they do not recognize that the right was violated. When we speak about political prisoners, they always say that everything is legal. But we record all these facts and we send complaints, and the reports like this that are prepared by human rights defenders, they help to prevent deterioration of the situation. And it is important to deal with healthcare issues. People lose their health because there should be medicines, there should be proper medical examinations, and this is really important if we are speaking about pretrial detention facilities. If there are questions, I will be glad to answer. This is a big spectrum of work, different areas, including, for example, conditions in pretrial detention facilities and colonies. And I would like to thank human rights defenders and the media that they focus on these issues. Those people who are in pretrial detention facilities in isolation, they help us to defend them. And you should be really courageous and strong in order to speak about torture, about conditions when you are still in prison. And these people speak before the prosecutors, before judges, before observation commissions. This is one of the most important thing. These people are really strong, really resilient. They go out and they continue to focus people's attention on this important topic. So this, thank you very much. So there are many aspects, and it is important to state that these things are systemic. These conditions in the pretrial detention facility and in colonies, and your courage and the courage of people who are now in prisons, in the pretrial detention facility in Crimea and the territory of the Russian Federation. These things are really important, and we all, the state, the public, we should support these people, and we should search for the new ways. We speak a lot about we should prevent deterioration of the situation. The main is not to lose hope. We should not stop. Thank you very much for your work, for your focus on this issue. Thank you for finding time for us. Now I would like to give the floor to my colleague, the analyst of our organization, Yevhen Yaroshenko. And he is one of the authors of this report. And he will speak about some conclusions our organization reached after we developed this research. Evgeny, you are given the floor. Thank you, Denis. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I will try to briefly sum up our discussion concerning conditions of imprisonment and to tell you about our research. We present the report concerning the conditions of the political prisoners, and we were able to document human rights violations, and 17 out of 35 were freed, 18 are still in prison, or in the colonies in the occupied Crimea, or in the territory of the Russian Federation. Also, I would like to quote one lawyer, Aidar Yazamatov. He is now in the court hearings. That's why he was not able to take part. And each lawyer who deals with political prisoners' cases. They have about 6 defenders, and it's not Aidar Yazamatov. He came to conclusion about the main violations. The violations are different. First, bad conditions, lack of medicines, delay in reaction concerning medical help, taking into account COVID situation, limitations to visits of relatives, violations of rights concerning religious rights in pretrial detention facility. The officials send people to isolation and bring them to other disciplinary measures without grounds. And I would like to outline those violations that were not mentioned. I would like to speak about torture. Torture is a large-scale practice that is used by the officials of FSB, especially in detention, in order to get the conviction. And torture is prohibited in Russia and in Ukraine. They have international obligations. In any situation, they are banned. In case of military conflict or special status or terror threat, nothing permits torture, no matter what the person did. And the Convention on Prevention of Torture, which suggests that the evidence that was provided in the course of torture should not be used in the course of the court hearing, in the court process. One more violation is non-correspondence to the conditions. So this is cold, humidity, moisture, also overcrowding of the cells in the occupied Crimea. At the moment, there is only one pretrial detention facility, and this is only for 747 people. It was built in Katerina's time, and there were no repair works for many years. And they put there twice many people. And if, for example, there is a cell for 10 people, they put 18 people there. And the inmates, they sleep in turns. So we understand that there is lack of square meters per prisoner. So many prisoners, many prisoners were held in such conditions. And we documented this all in our report. Administration of the colonies and pretrial detention facilities, they bring different pretexts to prevent meeting with consuls, with relatives, with lawyers. Some of them were not able to see their relatives for more than a year. About the visits from consulates, the practice is like this. They are rejected because allegedly they are citizens of Russian Federation. That's why they should not meet the Ukrainian consuls. And there is a practice of forced citizenship in Crimea through all those procedures. And they are citizens of Russia only in accordance with Russian laws, and not in accordance with other legislation. Also, there is a practice when administration of pretrial detention facility or colony, they carry out searches in cells, and in the course of searches, they seize the medicines that are needed for the health of the inmates, and they seize religious literature, for example, in Sever Mustafa chamber cell. And they also seize materials that are needed for protection. So this may be considered as the interference into private life. Also, in some cells, there were such conditions that they suffered from the bites of some parasites and some ugly insects, and there was allergy and some other types of health deterioration. Also about religious rights. Hizb ut-Tahrir cases, Hizb ut-Tahrir group members, they were provided with pork meat, and it is not allowed to eat in accordance with their religious views. Also, they were transported before breakfast, and they were returned in the evening. And this dry ration, it was expired. That's why they stayed hungry for the whole day. And the last one is discrimination based on ethnical or religious grounds. This was recorded concerning Alexander Kostenko and Vladimir Baluch. Alexander Kostenko, activist of Euromaidan, in the course of staying in one of the institutions of the penitentiary system. His inmates were beating him severely because of his ethnical background and his ideological views. So the administration created such conditions that inmates, they treated him badly. Vladimir Baluch, it is worth mentioning such a fact. When he stayed in isolation facility in Razdolna, the head of this isolation facility said that all the holes, so Ukrainians should be killed, he said, cut out. Esmer Mustafayev, when he spoke with his wife by the phone, his phone call was stopped because he used Crimean Tatar language during conversation with his wife. And at the end in the end, I would like to say that you may find information not only in our report, but in others through other sources from other NGOs, human rights defenders. You may find it on the internet. The Servier Mustafayev diary, and this is about how he stayed in the when he stayed in prison, and he wrote about his experience to his lawyer. So we spoke about different aspects, about conditions for political prisoners and what problems they face. And we had opportunity to hear from those people who survived this experience, and we were able to speak with the lawyers who are avant-garde in this work to help and release political prisoners. Those people who get information about the conditions. The question is open what to do, and the speakers mentioned that we should put more effort. Different actors should do more. Both the state and civil society, international organizations, they should all contribute in order to help people and to change the situation on the whole. This is really important, because it's not enough just to free separate people. It won't change the situation that exists now in the territory of Crimean Peninsula. And now I would like to invite everyone to the second block of our discussion about what is done now by different actors, what should be done. And the first speaker concerning this issue, I would like to invite Deputy Permanent Representative of the President of Ukraine in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, Tamila Tasheva. Please, Tamila, if you are with us, please, you are given the floor. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. It's weird when I am introduced in other capacity. You know that I worked for a long time in the CrimeaSOS, and I joined other human rights initiatives. During these 7 years, from the start of temporary occupation of Crimea, I followed the situation, what is going on with the prisoners. I know very well the situation concerning the situation our prisoners are in Crimea, and the situation of those who were brought to the Russian Federation. You've mentioned Servier Mustafayev diary, and he stayed in the chamber in cell 58, and Demaga mentioned about it. I would like to quote the cell where there is a lot of concern. The cell 58 is placed on the second floor of the main building. This is the cell for 2 inmates. It is near the post. The main difference of this chamber, there are those who brought there because of Article 205. 3 video cameras are set and post is near, and this provides isolation and the biggest pressure on those who are in the cell. And there is maximum control from the administration, including direct seeing us through the door. So these cells are overcrowded. The conditions are terrible. The healthcare is not provided. And for Muslims, there is no proper food. They are provided with pork and other prohibited products. So this is psychological pressure. It is difficult to deal with it. And often they do not allow lawyers, and there is no proper connection with the inmate, with the external world. It is limited, and this is a big problem. I was asked to tell that the state, from its side, what it can do, and it does a lot to protect inmates in the territory of Crimea and in the territory of Russian Federation, and also what can be done in the framework of international level and at the level of Ukrainian state. So all these crimes should be documented, and they are documented. Here we may mention that, first of all, the Prosecutor's Office of Crimea, starting 2016, documents all the facts of violations of human rights and the issues of conditions for political prisoners in prison, for persons who were sentenced on political reasons, and the department on investigation of cases that were committed in the conditions of the armed conflict, and we call it Department of War that was created in 2018. And that was really important to create such a department in order to investigate and document violations of human rights, both in the territory of Crimea and in the territory of the Donetsk and Lugansk oblasts. After all this is documented, we call it the track of so we work also at international in international courts. This is international courts and European courts on human rights, International Criminal Court. Last week we witnessed the decision of the big chamber, European Court on Human Rights. This preliminary decision that was brought about the issues of acceptability, and they said that all the crimes that were committed starting 27th of February, they happened during the efficient control of the Russian Federation. So all forced crimes, torture, illegal detentions, and so on. Starting that moment, starting end of February, the Russian Federation had effective control, and they won't be able to say that allegedly there is some Crimean self-defense committed something. So European Court said that Russian Federation is responsible for such crimes. Next, that is really important to say is the issue of declarations and working with our international partners at different international platforms. I may clearly say that at the meetings of UNO, and also during meetings of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe and the OSCE, this issue of detention of political prisoners, this issue is raised at a high level. During several days in January, there will be this meeting of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, and the report that is now prepared by SOS, CrimeaSOS, we will be able to provide it to Ukrainian delegation, and they will be able to speak about those violations. They will be able to hand this report over to their colleagues and also to provide it to the rapporteur on Crimean Tatar issues. I haven't seen the report, but I understand that Crimean Tatars are, of course, included in this report because the majority of political prisoners in Crimea, they are unfortunately Crimean Tatars. The next, that is really important, is the support of the families and political prisoners. Thank God, starting 2019, 2020, this opportunity of help, social, legal help, this was unblocked. And last year, I do not know about the exact number, but I believe that more than 70 people got this help from the state and 100,000 hryvnias to support families and for legal support. Together with the ministries on reintegration of the temporarily occupied territories, we are working to provide amendments to the provision, and we believe that we will have the opportunity to help those prisoners that are unfortunately, due to bureaucratic and other limitations, were not able to get this help because they were freed in 2014, 2015, or like Ismail Ramazanov, they were not able to get such assistance, and this help will be unblocked. The resolution that was approved in 2018, there were some aspects of legal collision. These people were not able to get this help, and we understand that these prisoners that were freed before this resolution, they have the same right to get this help. And also we believe that changes will be approved in order to provide legal help, to pay for this legal help that is provided by Crimean, Ukrainian lawyers. Unfortunately, this help is not provided in full scope by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The next issue, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they should speak about it. I do not know whether they join us today. And this is about consulate supervision. I believe that it is important to say here that our consuls who work in the territory of the Russian Federation, they are trying to be active to visit our inmates. It is impossible to do this in the territory of Crimea. There is no consulate. Our consuls are not able to do. But in the territory of the Russian Federation, when it is possible, when Russian side gives us opportunity to visit, to consul, they do this, and I would like to thank our Ukrainian consuls who work on such difficult conditions and psychologically difficult conditions for them. And I would like also to say about the work with our international partners at different levels. This work is connected with imposition of sanctions on human rights on those who committed human rights violations that are done in the territory of Crimea and against those who are in the territory of the Russian Federation, who are convoyed there from Crimea illegally. And now Ukraine is working to improve sanction legislation. Several weeks ago, at the end of December, there was committee hearings concerning sanctions. The legislation that was approved several years ago is not ideal. We should work on our mistakes. We hope that in 2021, we will be able to reach the level when the legislation on sanctions will be synchronized and we will be able to impose the sanctions our European partners impose. Together with a number of the colleagues from the state bodies, we are working on this, including on the issue of implementation of legislation of Magnitsky in Ukraine, the Magnitsky law, that is, first of all, about the perpetrators of human rights. And one more important aspect of international work is the issue of Crimean platform. This is the release and the issue of detention of political prisoners, non-use of ill treatment, inhumane treatment against our prisoners. And this will be brought to expert discussions in the framework of Crimean platform. This track of work is included into Crimean platform, and I believe that later on, maybe this will be based on the initiative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It will provide information to our international partners, to our people, what the state will do in the framework of the Crimean platform. Also, I should mention the issue that is really of concern for all of us. And you've mentioned this issue. This is the issue of release. We should say that Ukraine, from its side, makes the steps, everything that is needed. But we should understand that the issue of release is not only about Ukraine. This is about, first of all, actions of the Russian Federation. I should say that from my side, from the side of the Ombudsman, Human Rights Defenders Organization, the lists of the prisoners, they are in the office of the president. We work on them, we update those lists, and we, as the office of the president, we do this, and we know what chronic disease they have, who are in pre-trial detention facilities, who are in colonies, where they convoy these people. But unfortunately, Russian side during 2020, they nullified all those actions that we've tried to make. But our state does everything, but we do not see any Crimean people who were released like it was in 2019. And the last issue that is often raised, and it is important to mention this is the draft law on political prisoners. Not only political prisoners, it regulates 3 categories of citizens who are detained. These are those who detained for political reasons, civilians, and military prisoners. This draft law was created by NGOs and the Ministry of Reintegration and the Office of the President, and now it is in the office of the president, and we hope that this issue will be regulated. Even now, this help that is envisaged by this draft law, it is provided. That's why it is important to speak about it. This legal support and social support is provided due to this resolution. We do not need the law to unblock something. This law provides categories of people who are detained by the Russian Federation or by paramilitary units. And it says that there is three categories: political prisoners, civilians, and military prisoners that should be provided with some types of help. How it should be done? It should be done through commission. So this help is provided, but we understand that it is really important to adopt this draft law and to finalize these categories that should be protected by the Ukrainian state. And our international partners also should pay attention to these categories. Thank you very much, Tamila, for this broad answer. There are many issues, many victories, many criticism concerning actions of the state, but it is worth remembering that the state works with a lot of limitations and really difficult conditions. And it's not always possible to quickly reach the result we wanted to achieve. And from our side, the big victory is that the representatives of the majority of central bodies of executive power and other institutions, they work together with the representatives of civil society. They implement joint initiatives. They work together, and this improves the quality of work for the state bodies and for the civil society. And Tamila mentioned the issue of response from the international community. I would like to give the floor to the next speaker, Yulia Cheremichina. She is the representative of the Helsinki Foundation on Human Rights, Warsaw. Please, Yulia, please, are you with us? If yes, you are given the floor. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I would like to say that it's a great honor to speak together with Ismail and Adam Emil. They are at the front line of the fight with the occupation of Crimea. In my speech, I would like to mention three main issues. First, legal practice of the European Court on Human Rights in the context of examples that were brought during today's presentation. Later on, I will speak about sanction procedures, and Tamila mentioned about it. And finally, I would like to speak about solidarity with the Ukrainian political prisoners that are detained in the Russian Federation. As it was mentioned before, Russia, as an occupant state that implements sufficient control over the territory, should adhere to humanitarian law. Also, Russia is the side of International Convention on Human Rights, and it should be stressed here that they voluntarily joined the Council of Europe and undertook the obligations of the convention to provide in its territory the rights and the fundamental human rights in its territory. Crimea was not, and will not be the territory of the Russian Federation, but As last week, the Human Rights Court said that it executes efficient control over this territory. Speaking about the practice of the European Court on Human Rights, I would like to start with the most acute and the most painful topic. This is the topic of healthcare in the places of deprivation of liberty. European Court on Human Rights recognizes that in the hospitals of penitentiary facilities, medical services are not always of the standard quality like in other institutions for population. But the Russian Federation, in our case, they should guarantee proper level of health care and the well-being, and to provide medical help to the prisoners. In the practice of European Court of Human Rights, non-proper provision of healthcare services to the inmates. This may be state bodies knew that some person suffers chronic disease, but they do not provide proper health care to such a person, or they do not provide proper care, medical care. If, for example, the conditions was not taken, the health condition was not taken into account when the decision was taken to sentence this people to this person. So Jamil Gafarov was detained in 2018 in March, and this person needs special medical care. And the lawyer and the family of this person, they see that this cannot be provided in the pre-trial detention facility. And the lawyer constantly stresses that the condition of health of his client, that his health condition demands the change of conditions, that this measures against him should be changed. And the court continues his imprisonment despite this. Also, during today's presentation, the focus was on the issue that political prisoners, they do not have proper contact with their relatives, and this is really important in the context of being in the penitentiary facility. And this is really important in the context of COVID, when all the visits with the relatives are limited. In this case, the state should provide, in accordance with the recommendations of WHO, they should provide conditions in order that this contact with the family remains, maybe through Skype, by phone, but this should be provided, and there should be privacy. As it was mentioned today, the Servier Mustafayev, for example, he spoke in Crimean Tatar language, and this conversation was stopped, and it is not, it's unacceptable. Also about limitations to religious freedoms in the context of this, European Convention also regulates this right, and the state bodies, they are obliged to respect religious freedoms of those who were deprived of liberty, and they should refrain from any interference in the implementation of this right, and also they are obliged to implement positive measures to create conditions to provide for free religious right implementation in the penitentiary facilities. Speaking about practical steps in this sphere, I agree with Adam that all this does not have good results. Everything is too slow. But I believe that it is really important to use the mechanisms that we have in the framework of ECHR. There are temporary measures opportunities. You may submit them really quickly. You may demand changes of conditions of detention for individual political prisoners. This is not release. This is not justice for which we all fight. But this is the attempt to improve conditions of the detention at the moment, and also provision of proper medical help to them, without which it is difficult to cope, especially in the context of pandemic. Later on, there may be complaints to European Court on Human Rights and other institutions. This is a lot of work, and it should be done. And we should remind to the Russian Federation that they should implement those obligations they undertook on themselves voluntarily. Also in the context of political prisoners, and also I would like to speak about sanction policy. I would like to focus on the sanctions in the European Union that were introduced in 2014, and they continue, and we hope that they will continue. It is important in this context to cooperate with the organizations in different countries of Europe in order that they influence on their governments. They are in the framework of the European Union, and this is a complex procedure. It is worth doing. This is not a secret that for some European countries, it would be easier, more useful to get rid of sanctions, but we cannot agree with this. We should do everything possible in order that these sanctions remained and the number of subjects of sanctions increase. I believe that we should collect and document names of people who directly participate in detentions, in appeals concerning court decisions that are unjust, and we should send all those documents to the bodies of European Union. And the last question is about solidarity with the prisoners. I believe that maybe this is not the most important in the context of our struggle, but it is really important that people who are in the Russian prisons, they should know that many countries and people in different countries see what is going on with them. And the easiest way is to send letters. Maybe they won't reach the inmates, but at least they go to administration of the facilities and they see that the eyes of other people are on that person, on that he made. This is all from me. Thank you very much, Yulia. And lastly, I would like to give the final word to my colleague Anastasia Donets. She is also an analyst, and she is a co-author of this research. Anastasia, please, you are given the floor, and then we will wrap up. Thank you. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Thank you, Denis. Briefly summing up today's discussion, I would like to say, first of all, once again, I would like to stress that political prisoners are one of the most vulnerable groups compared with other people, the rights of which should be protected, and we are trying to protect their rights, and they are limited in their rights. They are under full control of the bodies of the state power. In our case, this is Russia, and this is a big concern because of systemic problems of penitentiary system of the Russian Federation that at the moment is also covers Crimea, and also the problems with the control mechanisms concerning the rights of prisoners, protection, and the disinterest of Russia to adhere to the rights of political prisoners. And these people, as it was mentioned, they were sent behind bars because they are there because they didn't like the actions of Russian Federation, and that's why they were sent to prison. Also, I would like to mention about the last part of this presentation. This is about protection of rights of political prisoners at the international arena. This protection that should be provided by Ukraine. As Albert Einstein said, that the problem can be resolved at the level it was created. So a lot is done by lawyers, by relatives. We, as human rights defenders, are trying to do something, and Ukrainian power also is trying to do something. But we should understand that this trend of of violation of the human rights of the prisoners, this will continue until the end of occupation. And I would like to speak about international courts, and Tamila mentioned about it. Ukraine addressed all possible international courts in order to protect the rights of Crimeans, protect itself in the international conflicts, to UNO Court, European Court on Human Rights, and International Criminal Court. And I would like to speak about it. I do not know what time I have, maybe 2 minutes, about the stage of cases in international courts. We lack time. Okay, then the only thing I would like to add is that we should be really patient, because the cases in the courts, they need time. In UNO Court and in the ECHR, they need 2 years to adopt the solution concerning jurisdiction on Crimea, and the International Criminal Court needed 5 years for this, and we are still waiting for final decision. And I would like to end this meeting at the positive note. Ukraine and people who are in the occupied territory and international community, they do really a lot in order to improve the conditions of political prisoners, in order to return them home soon. We thank very much all those who are involved. We thank them for their effort, and I thank you for your attention. Thank you very much. This is the end of our presentation. We thank representatives of UCMC, our audience, and to our participants. We won't stop. We will continue our work in the future. Thank you.